Welcome, watercolor artists. Today we're going to be working on creating a bokeh effect, which is the shallow depth of field in watercolor. I've heard that term before. What that means, bokeh is a photography term for shallow depth of field. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build that up with multiple layers of paint, water. I'm going to do that by putting color down, lifting color off, drying it, doing the exact same thing again, using masking fluid. Now in here, you can see this blue-green stuff that I've got in here, that's all masking fluid. So that area's been protected. I'm going to put some further color down, darken this down a little bit. All right, now I've already done 2 layers of paint on this, and what I'm going to do now, and then I put some more masking fluid down on top. I use Pebeo because it's a blue-green masking fluid. You can see it pretty easily. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the whole thing wet. I know this scares people because you think, oh man, if I get my watercolor paper all wet, it's just going to all run off. Well, that doesn't happen, fortunately. So I'm going to put down a lot of water here. And my water bottle's not doing very well. I got to replace this water bottle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tilt this up. I'm going to let gravity take most of the water off. Now you don't want to keep blasting the color too much because then you will start knocking off a bunch of color. And you're going to find traces of color come off the paper. It's not that big of a deal. You can see the water's a little brown down there, but it doesn't ruin the whole painting. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the water even across the whole surface. And if you do that, you're going to find that it prevents buckling of the paper. So I'm just getting this all nice and wet. And the reason why I'm doing this right now is because with the paper wet, when you come in here and you start dropping color, you're going to get soft edges. Then as the paper dries, you're going to get some harder edges. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some color on my palette. And I'm going to stick to the same colors I used in the original painting. Blues, greens, browns, yellows. Ooh, that's not attached to the paper anymore. I really shouldn't touch that. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into here. I'm going to mix up some sap green, which I believe this is the Holbein sap green, but I'm not entirely sure. I have a tendency just to, I have like 4 or 5 sap greens, so I just grab a bunch of random ones. Come in here with some color, darker color. Grabbing some color on my palette. I don't even know what it is. Grab some Cerulean if you want to. Just throw in some darker color here. Now don't go back and forth too much because that's going to start to pull off the color. You don't want to do that. The idea is you put some color down, you let it sit there, and you go back and forth and back and forth. That's what starts to lift your color off the paper, because that starts to disturb all the previous layers. Now, paper is buckled a little bit right now, which is why it's running off on the edges a little bit more than I want to. But what I'm trying to do is just going to darken down sections of this painting. Now, where the masking fluid has been applied, the paper is going to stay lighter. Problem is you can't see that though because it's covered with blue-green masking fluid. Coming into here, putting a little bit darker color. Darker color into here. And then I'm just kind of analyzing, see how this looks. If things run off too much, what I'm going to have to do is clean up on all 4. So I'm going to grab a paper towel, sit down here for a second, and clean up underneath aisle 4, because this isn't super important at this stage because we're several layers into this already. But if this is the first layer, you're going to get big water blossoms. And that I'm trying not to do. Now, I wish my paper had stayed attached to the board. So where there's some masking fluid, I'll come into here, push it down and try to get it to stick to that tape, which I think is right about there. It looks like it's attached to the board again. All right, our paper is still shiny, so it's still wet, which means you got lots of time to play around with the color temperature. Grab some extra paper towels here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tilt this up again and get the water even across the whole surface. Again, that helps to prevent buckling. And now I'm going to grab a squirrel mop brush, and this got a little bit lighter over here than I wanted it to, so I'm going to grab some blues and greens on the side because the paper started buckling on us a little bit. I'm going to come into here, darken it down a little bit, darken the corners. I usually always darken corners. It's an old photography trick. Ansel Adams did it, so I do it too. And I'm going to come into here and start dropping thicker paint, less water. Now this is going to give you soft edges because we're working on wet paper. The thicker the paint, the less it's going to move. So right here I'm dropping in some darker color. I'm going to grab a smaller brush. I believe this is a number 8 Richeson. Doesn't have anything on handle anymore because I've used it too much. Number 8 or 6, I think. I'm going to come into here and I'm going to start working with, again, thicker paint, less water, because then it won't move as much. I don't want it to be pure black, I just want it to be darker. Drop in some darker shapes. You want to bring a tree trunk back. Drop that there, let that sit there. If you want to bring this back a little bit, if it started to get washed out a little bit too much. Thicker paint, less water, that's the key. And this is just a matter of kind of building things up slowly. And I know that's hard because people want to do it too quickly. Now where there's masking fluid, I'm going to get lighter lines, but you can't see that because it's underneath blue-green stuff. I'm using Pebeo Masking Fluid. I use a variety of masking fluids for different reasons. Now down in this section, I don't want things to be as dark. Right there, maybe I do. Let's grab a little bit of orange too, just lighten this up a little bit. Can make that a little bit more watery. That will blend out. Oops, I had straight paint there. Things that are still wet, just kind of emulsify the paint. Grab different brushes. And I think this is relaxing and fun. But, you know, I think learning German's fun. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think it's a great language. Not the easiest in the world. So I'm coming into here, thicker paint, less water. You're going to find this doesn't move as much. This edge bled out on me a little bit. Let's go back into here. Some more blue. I'm mixing burnt sienna and ultramarine blue right now. It's just kind of sitting on top of the paper because it's thicker. Using some sap green also. Let's bring back this tree branch here. Start to lose that shape. And then I'm thinking about just other stuff in the woods. I want to just spatter some paint. That works just fine too. It makes it look more like foliage. And with nature, one of the hardest things is you just don't want to get into patterns. Because if you're standing out there in the woods, the only time things are ever evenly spaced apart, equidistant, is when you're like in a subdivision. Or if you're driving on the highway. Otherwise, things are random in nature. So now you see I'm doing thicker paint, less water. Doing some shapes coming across things. The more interaction you have, the more depth it builds up. So the more you have things going back behind certain objects. And I'm using a small rigger brush right now. Again, I don't even know what size it is because the handles, everything's rubbed off on it. I've had this brush for a long, long time. Come back into here. A lot of water right here. You can see big puddles. So if I touch that with the color, it's going to spread out quite a bit. Over here, it's not going to spread as much. There's some masking fluid in that area. You can bring these lines in front because these tree branches will now be coming in front of that lighter area. And just don't try to create the same thing over and over again. And that is a really hard thing, especially with nature. If you have a branch coming out here, now I'm doing like a yellowish branch. So now we're starting to see some sections of the paper that are drying a little bit. And when you get into sections that are a little bit drier, what you're going to start to do is you're going to start to get harder edges now. Always switching that color temperature up a little bit. So it's just not the same thing constantly. Let's go over here, do some things here. Getting harder edges up here because this is drying more. I changed up the color a little bit. We got this stag standing here. Did not paint the stag, of course. You could. But, so it's a little bit harder edges around the stag. And I'm not looking at the picture very much. So what I'm doing is I'm just going in here and just trying to build up a sense of depth. So where the paper's drying, we're getting harder edges. Where it's wet, we're going to get softer edges. I'm just trying to kind of keep it random so it looks like tree branches. Got to grab a larger brush here. Switch my color a little bit. Always changing that color temperature up. You notice yourself doing the same thing over and over. Stop. I know that's way easier said than done. Just doing a little bit of spattering down here. Spattering in this area, the paper's getting really dry in here, so this is now when I might want to switch to even thicker paint, less water. Using Cobalt Blue, Burnt Sienna, which make a very nice dark color. Now, and this paper is flat, by the way. You do this in an angle, everything's going to go downhill for you, and that might work out for you. It might not. I mean, gravity is your best friend. You get to my age, and then it is not. Then when you fall down, it just hurts. And then you find out real quick what your deductible is, which is why I don't ski anymore, because I'm like, yeah, how that deductible is way higher than I want to pay for 2 broken legs. All right, and as this is drying on me still, I'm coming into here with, bigger brushes, smaller brushes, and where I start to put down color now, you're going to see it's not going to move as much because the paper is starting to get a little bit drier on me. I come up into here, I'm going to make this a little darker. Make that pop out a little bit more. And this is how I work these guys. I keep going back and forth, back and forth. You want to get more branches of things coming out here. You can see this looks like it's coming forward now because it's darker. Thicker paint, less water. You could switch back to thicker yellow color too. You don't have to do all darks. Just some schmutzig, which is a German word for dirty, but I like to say that for just random details. Ooh, it's starting to rain. I didn't realize we were supposed to get rain today. Just gonna ride my bike outside. I'm glad I didn't do that. Okay, putting some darker areas into here, just spattering paint. Paper looks still wet down here. All right, now as this is really starting to get a little bit drier, and this is when I really got to pay attention to what's going on with the paint. Let's do a cleanup on aisle 4 underneath the paper, just in case we got a lot of water getting underneath there. I'm going to take some pure yellow color, spatter some yellow into some sections. Just for more interest, it just makes it look more like nature if it's random. Take some pure cerulean blue. Ooh, that was a bit much. It always looks like it's too much, but 10 minutes later, or 5 or 30 seconds later, it doesn't. I'm going to take that out a little bit. And then while things are still wet, scratch with my fingernail. I usually have my palette knife here, but I think I have it in my teaching rig. So I'm going to grab that. All right, you can hear that rain. It's really coming down. So I grab my palette knife, which I use all the time when I'm painting. And what I do is when the paper's still wet, if you got areas that are dark enough, you can scratch back to some highlights. Now the idea is not to scratch into the paper, but to push the pigment aside. And I know it's easier said than done because I've been trying to teach this for a while. And at one class is 0 for 12. Not one person could get it right. And I'm going to turn this sideways for just a quick second. And when things are dark enough, you can also scratch back to branch highlights. So it's just another way to create depth in an image, is to scratch the darks. It's got to be dark enough. If it's too light, it just doesn't do much. That's just a great way to get, again, just some detail. And if you don't like it, you can use your finger and scumble with it and get rid of it. And then as this paper is continuing to dry on me here, I'm going to go back to thicker paint, less water. And now you're going to see this isn't moving much when I put it down on the paper. Paper is not 100% dry, but it's getting there. If you want harder edges, you're still going to get a soft edge because the paper is slightly damp. But you can see the paint's not moving as much. So now that's really coming forward. And if you're trying to make darks, I don't use black. I usually mix my colors. Generally ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. Make a very nice dark. Very granulating too. You want to throw a little bit of the green that you've been using into their sap green, you can do that. Okay, so that's really popping forward now. Let's go back up into here because I kind of lost this edge a little bit and just drop some darker color into it. See how that's not moving? It's just sitting there. So now that's really coming forward. Let's go down to this little section where there's, just gonna take my brush, trying not to spatter into here. Did a little bit, that's all right. And make some just darker marks in here. I want to darken down the corners. You can do that right now. Go back up into here, do some little streaks. Don't want to do too much because that's a little darker in that section. So you can see now the paint's really not moving too much. So if you want to go back into the background still and work on some background areas and get harder edges too, at that point I'd want to switch to less paint, or thinned out paint that's a little bit thinner, not as dark. And it's still going to move on you a decent amount, but we're starting to get hard edges now. Bring another tree branch down to here. And just building this up. If it just turned into a big bloody mess, don't worry about it. That's what happened to me like the first 10 times I tried this. Maybe 20 times I tried this. This is a great exercise learning how to control edges though. A little branch right there. Tree trunk right there. I don't really look at the picture that much when I'm doing this. I just kind of just go with it. If it looks like it's too much, we're probably going to be okay. Doing a little branch back in there and hit it with water and feather it out. Alright, I'm going to stop and let that dry. Give that a few minutes, see how that looks. And we're going to do the same thing again. Get the paper wet and then go into the foreground and drop in some darker objects, thicker paint, less water. And then take off some colors with the incredible nib. You activate the color, lift off with the paper towel. It's just a push and pull process, and you go back and forth between making things look like coming forward and backwards by removing color, putting color back down on the paper, and it creates this beautiful three-dimensional look. And here's the final painting. I lifted off the masking fluid, pulled out a few more highlights, and put down a few more dark branches, and I'm going to call this painting finished. If you like this content, hit subscribe. I'll have more watercolor tutorials in the future. Thanks a lot, and happy painting.